All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Austin Culp. I'm Manager of Customer Success here at InflowCX. Very excited to talk to you today about migrating to the cloud with our great friends and partners from Genesys. We've got a few more webinars coming up. The dates are listed there on the title screen. If you're interested in any of those, please feel free to register. And if you're not sure how to do that, just contact us afterwards and we'll get you signed up for those. Today, I've got, myself, I've already made my introduction, but we've got Marty Jackson, Strategic Division Lead at Genesys. We've got Steve Kiefer, Principal Solution Lead for PureBridge North America, and then Giuliano De Silva, our Senior Director of Value Consulting. We're each going to present a small portion, and then after our Genesys team presents, there will be a chance for Q&A after each section. So if you've got questions, type them along the way. We can answer them at the end, and we'll make sure we get to everybody. Before we dive into the migrating to Genesys part of our webinar today, I want to tell everyone a little bit about who InflowCX is, just in case you found us and aren't sure what we do or who we are. Effectively, Inflow is an innovative provider of advisory, consultation, deployment, and managed services for contact center, customer experience, and unified communication solutions. Think of us as an organization that can help you evaluate, implement, and support any type of CX, UCaaS, contact center, or contact center adjacent technologies, things like workforce management, workforce optimization, et cetera. We provide a very vendor neutral approach. So we've got really deep relationships with, partners, specific partners like Genesys. But we really focus on the customer and making sure that your needs are met first and foremost. We've done, a ton of different installs and have several different managed service agreements around all the technologies that I've talked about. Because Inflow is really focused just on those three technologies, we stay in our lane. We know what we're great at. We are able to, diversify as far as industries goes. We've got some great customers in all types of industries, everything from tech to BPO to healthcare and really anything in between. So a little bit of a credibility slide there. One of the final pieces I'll kind of leave you with is that, again, we are a vendor agnostic organization. However, we do have really great capabilities with companies. Genesys is a great example of one where we can, implement, support, and provide additional expertise outside of a traditional resell relationship, with several companies. Some of our, great partners are here. This is just a sampling, and as you can see, we've got a breadth of companies that we're partnered with that we can help you evaluate and work with and on. If you think of InflowCX, the last thing I'll kind of leave you with here is think of three things, three different ways we help customers: guidance, execution, and optimization. Guidance being looking at, your current technology environment, documenting requirements for if you were going to evaluate different technologies, what they would need to be able to bring to the table to support you effectively. And then in addition to evaluating technology, we've also got a consulting part of our business that can help you from a people and process standpoint. So think about operational consulting, labor strategy consulting specific to the contact center. That's our guidance piece. Execution, the way I like to think about this is that you've got a technology or you've got a solution that you want to move forward with. Inflow can help you execute there. So whether that's project coordination or project management, or a full implementation of a new system or any types of integrations between systems that you may need, we can help out there. And then on the optimization side, we've got a world-class customer success team whose sole focus and sole responsibility is ensuring that our customers are A, happy with, and B, getting the most out of any technology partner that they're working with. We've got managed services capabilities. So, think of help desk and troubleshooting types of things with many of our strategic partners, as well as a great technical account team in WEM and business intelligence services. That's enough about us. The focus of today is migrating to the cloud with Genesys. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Marty to present his portion of the webinar.
Thanks, Austin. Let me share my screen real quick and we'll get started. I'm just going to assume everyone can see the presentation. So I'll give you a little bit about myself. Thanks, Austin. So my name is Marty Jackson, Strategic Vision Lead. I work in the Shared Services Group at Genesys. And basically what we do all day long is help customers understand why they should move to the cloud, the value of doing that, as well as how they should do it, which Steve and Gio are going to get into in a minute. But really what my role is today is to explain what we see as to why organizations are moving to the cloud. And one of the things that we do see is regardless of vertical or size, most organizations look the same. So as I'm going through this, I want you to put yourself into the role of, does this match what's going on at my organization or my team, et cetera? And then if you've got some questions, I'm happy to answer those towards the end. So let's jump into it. So the first thing is let's talk about what is the pain that's driving this. So I used to be in IT. I used to be a network engineer. So I have some experience as to what's driving the background of this. And the first thing is that customers and their needs change. They don't stay stagnant, or we could have been using what we were using 20 years ago. And we saw this even before COVID, is that the demand to reach out and touch organizations and speak with them and interact with them was growing exponentially, specifically around digital channels, et cetera. And so not only on top of that, now you're being compared not only within your vertical, but all verticals. So if I have a great customer experience with my energy company, I expect my healthcare company to provide me the same level of experience with the same level of effort, right? So we're seeing a lot of these trends continue to grow exponentially, which means in a prem environment, you're waiting on us. Now, it typically is around a 24-month turnaround cycle, 18 to 24 months, something like that, for us to create this big package that we're going to ship to you that you then have to implement from an IT perspective. And that's where it gets really interesting. So you're waiting on us 18 to 24 months, and now you're into your change management where you got to go through multiple change advisory boards. You've got to do the hardware. You've got to get new hardware. You got to do software licensing. Then you've got to do integrations for all those new things. Then you have to do performance, quality, security testing. That's usually a 6 to 9 month process. So by the time you get through all that, you're looking at 30 months for any kind of big organizational change. And what we see is we start to see little silos or pockets of information, or, this is up to date on the latest platform, but this other part of our solution is not. So we start to see this big issue of having everything is not the same as having everything in the same solution. So when you start to take a picture of what customer experience can look like, I'm from Georgia, so I call this my Waffle House slide. It's an easy way for you to see everything that happens within CX. And over on the right are all the different channels and capabilities and integrations, et cetera. And for those in organizations that don't have to deal with this, they don't really understand how complex this is. So each one of these boxes, if it's a different vendor or a different version, you have to have integrations for that, which means data translation, which means probably the data is not extremely accurate, which then starts to impact how well you can actually service your customers as well as your agents. And not only that, now change becomes exponentially harder. It's like one more car in traffic in Atlanta, right? At some point, there's just too much and you just can't handle anymore. And my brethren on the IT side, they're stuck with trying to make all of this work harmoniously to drive the kind of experience they want. And business has all this demand. Well, that demand is pinned up because of technical debt with custom code, duplicated efforts for administration, et cetera. It's just a very complex beast to make it work the way that you want to. And again, what we see is every time you try to add something to this, the level of effort becomes exponentially harder. It's not a linear exercise. And again, I've seen a lot of organizations, use this chart, borrow this chart from me, because they'll actually start to put all their different vendors up on each one of these boxes so they can show people outside of IT, this is what we're dealing with. So if we want to move to the cloud, it's not about adding one new capability. And we'll get into that in a second. It's actually about being agile and being able to proactively meet market demands and react in real time. So what I'm going to share with you is some assessments that we've done. This is real customer data. What I'm going to show you is a specific customer assessment that we did. But again, what we found, and I've done dozens of these assessments, if not hundreds of these. Genesys has done 1,000 of these assessments. And what we have seen is, again, regardless of size, regardless of vertical, almost every organization has the same problems at its core, right? So let's take a look at this. So the first thing I want to orient you on is this is a radar chart. The closer you are to the center of this chart, the worse you are at that capability. So what you want to be is towards the outer edges, right? So if we look at this as 4 quadrants, and we mix them up sometimes depending on the organization, like if they're in healthcare, it's not necessarily revenue per se, or if they're in utilities, it may be more margin. But anyway, let's take these 4 as an example. So you have system management, revenue, efficiency, and time to market. So what we're looking at here is current maturity. And again, put yourself in your own shoes and say, does this ring true to what we're going through? So the first thing that we see is that Prim organizations are great at system management because they have to be. It has to be scalable, reliable, all the others that you need to have an enterprise level solution. But what that means is you have to throw people, time, resources, money, et cetera, at making that work. And these are, some quotes we have from a customer. Say, for instance, they were very risk averse. We're a belt and suspenders type of company. So they have redundancy everywhere, just a lot of people making this work. And that's typically at the cost of being efficient. So like I talked about before, they have lots of tools. They don't use them very well. Rarely are they on the latest version. And, I'm not only talking about, our competitors, everyone that's on-prem. Typically is a version or 2 behind because it's just very difficult to stay current because of the issues I talked about before. Well, if you're not efficient, you can't innovate, or it's very hard to innovate. And this is where, I do feel sometimes for the IT teams is, the business wants things to happen. IT knows how to make it work. It's very hard to do it. So many times in IT, we're in the business of no or not yet, or at some point in the future. And that's a tough place to be in when you know what needs to be done and it's just really hard to do. So, again, we see this quote of IT is the most precious resource. They're like oxygen to our organization. So when we pull them in, we got to make sure it's high level, top priority stuff. And while revenue may be okay, they're not driving the kind of numbers they want, either because they can't keep current customers happy or they can't grow and get new customers. So what would you expect the maturity would be? Well, of course, they would want to expand out into the left. So their first priority typically is, let's get really efficient. And that's interesting because most people would say, well, revenue is our top priority. But what we see is that they see efficiency as a way to drive revenue. So if we have simpler tools that are well integrated, we can keep our costs low, and we don't have to continue to throw people at the problem. We can augment our core staff with technology to help them to then drive the revenue that we want. A couple of ways to drive revenue is to have your current customers super happy and they want to do more business with you, or you innovate so you can go get more market share. And this, frankly, is the real driver behind cloud. It's not at any point in time that you say, well, we've got AI, we're good to go. Or, we've got our bots, we're good to go. There's never going to be a point in time where there's enough. You're always going to need to be able to adapt. And that's where time to market comes into play. It's such a huge differentiator for cloud. And then lastly, system management, where most organizations are really good on-prem. Even though it's rated 4 here, it doesn't mean that it's not important. It means it's not a differentiator. And the analogy I use is, I use a large electrical company here in Georgia, and I've never called them up and asked them, tell me about your back-end systems. I don't care. Like, when I flip the switch, I expect the solution to work. And if it doesn't, I expect them to proactively be reaching out to me and say, Marty, we know there's an outage. We got people working on it, et cetera. But the back-end part of it is not a differentiator. So organizations want to focus less on that, and they want to focus more on the innovative piece of it. So I typically stop here, but since we're in the webinar format, I won't stop here now. If there's any questions, we can talk about it at the end. But I want you to think about where you are specifically and where your organization is. How challenging is it to innovate? What's keeping you from being able to innovate? How do you compare to this? Are you in the dark blue or are you in the teal? We typically see Prim in the dark blue. And how would you define your ability to actually innovate and drive some efficiencies? So once you do that, I go to another radar chart. These are some of my favorite ones here when I present to executive teams, business, and IT. This is an example, real customer data. I call this my wheel of capabilities. You can see here on the outside all the main things that you need to be able to do. Again, on the inside, the closer you are to the center, the worse you are at those capabilities. The orange here is representing this customer's core capabilities. So this is how they rated themselves. And again, excellent is all the way out to the edge, poor is in the center. And you can see here in the white area, that's all the areas that they could actually improve or add new capabilities. And blue is their ability to do anything about it. And that's the key that you need to pull away from this. Is rarely do I go into an organization and they go, Marty, we have no idea where we should be better. We don't know what's next. That rarely, if ever, happens. What happens is we know what we need to do. We don't have a platform that enables us to be in control. And that's really what cloud does for you. And we'll talk about Genesys Cloud in a minute, but really the key here is having a platform, and the goal is not to have this giant blue wheel where you're perfect at everything. That's not the key here. The key here is that the innovation is ready for you to consume. So now you're empowered to go back to the business. And I've seen this many times with IT where the relationship becomes extremely strategic because now IT is able to take a look at the roadmap. They're understanding what's going to be coming down the pike from Genesys, and they can go to the business and say, hey, this looks like a fantastic new capability. Let's pilot this. Now, in premise versions of piloting something, guess what you have to do? You have to go get hardware. You have to write the integrations. You have to do all those things as if it's a new rollout. And it may take 6 months to pilot something. Where in the cloud, the innovation is there for you to consume. You can turn it on, roll it out to a subset of your agents. And if it works well, roll it out to everyone else. So if it doesn't, pull it back, find out why, and either try again or decide that you don't want it. But now you're in control. And this is the ultimate comparison chart. This is ultimately what this gets down to. Is it's a true shift in thinking from when can I have something, which is a prem-based thought process, to how should I use something, which is a cloud-based process. And again, a lot of organizations may think they want to go to the cloud, but they're not sure how to discuss it. They're not sure how to prove it. And they use these charts to drive those conversations, even outside of CX, to explain what the value of cloud is. And again, it's not a particular feature at a moment in time. It's whatever feature comes in the future or capability, you can pivot and start to use that. So just got a couple of slides here to talk about Genesys before we can stop for questions or I hand it off to Steve. But for us, we call it the power of one. So an all-inclusive solution where everything's already tightly integrated, API-based, microservices-based. So it's easy to innovate. It's easy to integrate on top of, et cetera, if you want to use something outside of that. But that's where you get that true DevOps mentality of driving change on a weekly basis because you've got an all-in-one platform that is microservices-based. It makes it very easy to do that. You can do the click to try new capabilities. So we've created products that are easy to integrate with if you have something that you want to keep, but if you want to have something that's all inclusive and does everything you need to do, we have that as well. And as far as the company is concerned, one of the differentiators that we see that we have, besides the product stuff, is that we've completely reconfigured our investment, our product level teams, the org structures, everything is built around a DevOps model so that we're continuously innovating. You can see here the 300 million annually R&D investment. It's actually higher than that now. I think it's as much as our top 2 or 3 competitors combined. You can see the number of features that we're rolling out every year, and it's growing faster and faster. So you don't have to choose between, well, we've got Genesys that's been here for 20 years, but maybe they're slower development. No, you're getting 20, 30 years of CX experience on a DevOps platform. So we know what needs to be built, and we're investing in building that. And you can see over to the right the continuous delivery that we drive. 20,000 code updates annually in one of our cloud solutions. We've got weekly deployments into a cloud solution that has no customer interruption, and you're still in control of that. Just because we put it in the cloud doesn't mean you have to use it. You're still in control of whether you want to use it or not. So you still have that level of control, but you also have that level of innovation. So again, I'm going to stop here before I hand it to anyone, and we'll see if there's any questions. And if not, I'll let Steve take over. I must have done a really good job of answering everybody's questions in those slides. So that's what I'm going to go with. Thanks, everybody.
Hi there. Can everyone see my screen? Or confirm? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Steve Kiefer. Once a customer prospect understands the value of the cloud and wants to move forward, the next logical question is, how do we get there? So the first thing we want to do is build a little bit of trust. Just over 5 years ago, Genesys acquired Interactive Intelligence, and what we really needed to do at that time was to gain market share. And we built a program to really go after the contact center leader in the market, actually that it still is today with Avaya, have more contact center seats than any other manufacturer. And we built a prescriptive migration approach to transform that Avaya base into Genesys. And as our program grew, we became more and more successful to the point where we've done over 4,000 transformations from premise-based manufacturers to Genesys. That's thousands of Avaya, just under 1,000 Cisco, right? 2.5 years ago, we started focusing on our own base of premise customers. We've transformed over 500 of our own customers to the likes of Genesys Cloud. We're doing this a lot, right? Almost 3 times a day. 3 times a day, we're displacing the competition. And we can do it fast. Not that fast is really important. It is when it comes to time to market, time to value, as Mari just went over. We needed to make sure that we do it right. That's where I'll get ahead and go into our prescriptive migration approach. So really, it's a methodology that we've established that builds trust and confidence, so we can transform you from that premise-based solution to the cloud. We look at it as a 3-step process. During the first step, we really need to understand what the customer's current state is. We also need to understand what the future vision is of the organization and what is holding them back, right? We learn this information by meeting with different stakeholders of the organization, business, IT, functional specialists, with the different resources that we'll bring to the table so that we can design a solution that's best for your organization. We're going to have a plan on how we're going to transform and innovate during implementation. And then most importantly, reach those achieved business desired outcomes that we're learning here within the first phase within discovery. Again, we're going to cover up to 3 different areas with the specialists, the stakeholders of the organization: business, technical, and financial. One of the biggest steps is to understand their vision through Genesys use cases. That not only helps out with where we need to go within the current state of the Genesys cloud transformation, but will also help out when it comes to the ROI and TCO financial aspect that Giuliano will cover. We need to understand the operational pains, the gap analysis. We need to understand the current state of technology and where that IT architecture is going to go, to help us build those timelines to make sure that we have a business case to transform an organization. Once we have all that information acquired through the discovery phase, we want to come back to the customer with a plan. Not only how are we going to get there, but how long will it take, and what is an idea of what that price is going to look like. We also want to show the customer, what is it a day in the life within the Genesys cloud solution. And then, of course, the financial justification, that final business case. So how do we execute? We want to do it within a phased approach. We look at it as a walk, run, fly methodology. I'm going to start with walk, which is really the current state of the existing solution that the customer is utilizing today. If we do find that there's low-hanging fruit and technologies that we can add to the current state because it makes sense from a financial benefit perspective, we can go ahead and add it during the walk. We then move to run and fly. We've laid the data during the walk phase to start collecting the information so we can get better at customer experience by utilizing the technologies that are in play. The fly phase is really differentiating the technologies that we've implemented to really create that customer experience that is ever changing. Wanted to throw an example of the walk, run, fly that we've done for an organization, right? We build individual phases for each organization that we meet with. Every organization is unique and different. But this kind of gives a guideline of what we would bring out to an organization after having this discovery meeting. We need to achieve the business desired outcomes, right? I'm not going to go through all of these, but we need to improve customer experience. There have to be revenue and cost savings. We want to improve the agent experience, the agent engagement, even the employee experience and engagement. But these are some of the outcomes that we want companies to think about. If they're going to be unique, there's going to be more, right? We just named a splattering of outcomes that organizations have come to us for, right? But we need to find what is yours so we can reach those. Companies who've gone through gone through this process are here. I want to point out Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was a former Avaya customer, and about 3.5 years ago, they decided to come on board with Genesys. They went through our prescriptive migration approach. They implemented our private cloud solution, which we no longer sell. Within 1.5 years, they transformed to Genesys Cloud. They wanted to be in more control of their environment and move to a true CCaaS solution. Some top customer observations that we've heard from organizations that have taken the leap to Genesys Cloud. We've done this a long time, right? There's no more. We are more of a manufacturer when it comes to maturity, when it comes to developing and selling cloud solutions than any of our competitors. The innovation is top notch. I always like to include the R&D that we include within the innovation. We do spend more money than R&D than 2 of our top competitors combined. As Marty had mentioned, it's a one hand to hold. It's an all-in-one solution. You don't have to reach out to multiple vendors. Everything is under the skin. It helps out with the reliable reporting as well. I'm not working with a myriad of different solutions where I'm pulling information to build a particular report. I have all that information at my hands. Same thing with the omnichannel desktop. Regardless if it's a customer, the agent, the supervisor, I'm seeing that entire historical data on my desktop. And our routing is really different from how organizations have typically routed calls in the past. We want to make sure that call goes to the agent that's going to help them the fastest. It may take a little, it might not be stumbling upon my words, I apologize. Our routing, I apologize. We do things different when it comes to the routing, where we have the call, or however the organization wants to reach out, or person wants to reach out to the company. We want to make sure that the answer or the problem that the consumer is reaching out for gets handled the fastest. I apologize for stumbling on my words, and if there's any questions, I'm here for you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. I'm Juliano da Silva. I lead the value consulting team over here at Genesys, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about financial viability analysis, how it can help you work a business case for a cloud move. So basically, the way we typically talk about migration or a financial analysis for a business case for a cloud migration is we try to help you understand basically how to consolidate a business case, how to actually bring three conversations together: a business, a technical, and a financial conversation. More specifically, what we are going to try to do is, independent of whether you see the conversation starting on the business side or on the technical side, when we start really evaluating your investment options, where to go, basically what level, what features, capabilities, and so on. What we want to try to do is actually support those decisions with a financial analysis. So the idea is, again, to try and bring those three conversations together into a perspective of how specifically the Genesys Cloud solution will deliver to a business outcome that we're looking for. Okay. I am actually going to turn off my video because my camera is flickering a little bit. So, all right. So more specifically, talking about the financial analysis, what we are trying to do is give you a perspective of savings as well as a perspective of benefits that you could be realizing from that utilization of the Genesys platform. We tend to actually run two exercises. The idea is to do a total cost of ownership as well as a return on investment analysis. We want to make sure that you are getting a really good perspective of net value. When we talk specifically about a move from on-premise to cloud, TCO will have a picture similar to the one that you see over here on the screen. The idea is that, yes, we're going to be shifting a lot of the current on-premise costs related to hardware maintenance and infrastructure into the cloud. So it's inevitable that the whole cost structure transforms quite a bit, in fact. For us, to give you an example, out of the many exercises that we have done out there, what you see over here is the typical savings that we can see out of a Cisco InflowCX infrastructure of about 500 UC endpoints, 150 agent contact center operation. You see right there 28% savings in 3 years. If we go and we change to a different size of operation, but now actually a higher portion of that infrastructure being represented by the contact center, you see a little more savings in there. And then also another example where we have an operation that is just a contact center, not having any other UC endpoints in there. So we have actually a considerable savings when we talk about Cisco migration to Genesys Cloud, for instance. If we go into an Avaya perspective, you can see over here, for instance, the savings that we've been seeing with our customers that are former Avaya customers. And in fact, we have quite a few perspectives that we can share with you, not only how the software spend is transforming, but also all the spend with other components in your cost structure as well. So we can actually share all of those details with you. We do have a multitude of benchmarks that we can bring to you. There's a lot of, out of these many migration exercises that we have done, we collected a lot of intelligence that we can actually share with you in the process of building a business case for you. However, as Marty was saying, and also Steve covered a little bit in his presentation, the IT savings, the infrastructure savings is just the first step, right? So there is the fact that you are going to be using the Genesys software to be able to achieve some of the goals that you have, some of the, I would say, delivering solutions to some of the business challenges that you have. So the idea is that once we understand what are the use cases for the Genesys software, we can help you also quantify those benefits. So more specifically, what we are trying to understand from you is a list of what are those goals, right? What is specifically we're trying to achieve. From there, the Genesys team will help you understand basically what use cases you could be using out of the Genesys platform. Once we understand what those use cases are, we can then identify what benefits, what calculators we have that will be helping you quantify that value. Genesys has a library of over 200 calculators that it could use, and they're all very clear on how the benefits are achieved. They are all bottoms-up calculators. So the idea is, as we are calculating the value, that you understand exactly where the value is coming from. And then once we can project transformation, the value can in fact be quantified and translated into dollars. We also have, just in the same way that we have benchmarks for TCO, we have benchmarks for business impact. We can slice and dice this data the way you need it, and by the size of your operation, by the industry that you are working on. So there's a lot of intelligence here that we can share with you as well. If I could give you an example of how all of this actually comes together, more specifically, you see over here a TCO analysis. What you see, it's the picture of a current state, more specifically. And you can see here, basically, on the left side of this slide, a snapshot of that iceberg, right? So you see basically platform costs, you see basically your operational costs in there as well, and also perspective of CapEx. And this is a projection for 5 years. That is now, if we go and we take it to the future state, you're going to see that a lot of those costs are actually going away because Genesys is actually taking over all of that cost component that you see, and they're basically supporting the software that you run today, right? So Genesys is literally absorbing all of that. The idea is that once you go and you pair those savings with benefit projections, however it is that you arrive at then, how much impact you actually perceive to realize from the use cases that you are going to implement, we can then bring everything together where you're going to see a TCO analysis at the top, basically a projection of year-over-year savings, realization of benefits, and so on, right? So at the end of the day, we can actually give you a perspective of 3-year TCO, 5-year TCO, as well as return on investment, and a few other metrics we can also provide as well, okay? As far as engagement, it's not really something that we tend to force on our customers, right? So the goal for us is really to be involved in your process. We want to be part of it. We want to give you, basically share with you all the details that we have, all the tools, all the knowledge, all the information that we have, basically support your business case process, whatever the format of that process is. The idea is for you to gain total perspective over facts, figures, basically all the decisions made into the analysis. The goal is really not for us to build an ROI analysis and give you a number and you not really understanding where the numbers come from. So the goal is really for us to work with you, support you, however you judge adequate. Okay, so I'll give it back to Austin here. So I appreciate your time today. Let us know if we can help you. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Giuliano. Well, I appreciate everybody's time and learning about migrating to the cloud with Genesys today. I don't see any questions in our Q&A or in our chat, but if you do have any, please put them in there. While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions. Plenty of ways you can get in touch with Inflow and or Genesys. For us, on our side, subscribe to us on YouTube. We have a bunch of really educational, informative videos there. We've got a podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then we're on all the major social platforms too. And if you want to get in touch with us directly, I've got a phone number there, as well as contact@inflowcx.com is the best way.